This is Kevin from Passion for the Word. I want to say right off the bat, thank you for sharing the videos that you've done, and thank you for the words of encouragement. Continue sharing our videos, praying for this ministry, hitting the like buttons. Only one button, like button. If you got any questions, put them in the comments below the video. We've got an email address that is at the end of the video or in the section below. Send us questions. We'd love to hear how these are touching you, if they are. Hopefully they are. Today we're going to discuss the purpose of prophecy. Now, I'm not. This is going to be mostly my opinion. I'm not trying to make a doctrine here. It's possible you could. Let's see. It's my opinion that the purpose of prophecy is not so much to predict the future as it is to recognize God knew the future before it took place, hundreds or even thousands of years before it took place. And the reason I say that is because the prophecies, all of them that I can think of that have been fulfilled, before they come true, they seem to be incredibly vague. After they come true, it's amazing the clarity that shows up in them. Now we'll look at a few examples of this. Now, as far as making a doctrine, I could go say Matthew chapter 6 is all about not trying to predict the future. I'm not going to try to make that case. Just by looking at these prophecies, looking at what they were, how they would have been read before they took place, how they'd have been read after, and see what your opinion is on it. The first prophecy we're going to cover is the story of Zedekiah. He had prophecies given to him by both Jeremiah and Ezekiel. Let's do a little background first. Zedekiah was the king of Judah. Judah was about to be overrun by Nebuchadnezzar because the nation of Judah had not been doing as God had commanded it. Without getting into the whole story, suffice it to say that Zedekiah was going to rebel against Nebuchadnezzar, even though he had made a treaty with Nebuchadnezzar, an agreement. He had been warned not to do this by Jeremiah and Ezekiel, and he ignored the warning. So let's look at the prophecy from Jeremiah. Thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, go and speak to Zedekiah, king of Judah, and tell him, thus saith the Lord. So this is Jeremiah speaking to Zedekiah on behalf of God. Behold, I will give this city into the hand of the king of Babylon, and he shall burn it with fire. And thou, that'd be Zedekiah, shalt not escape out of his hand, but shall surely be taken and delivered into his hand. His hand there would be Nebuchadnezzar. And thine eyes shall behold the eyes of the king of Babylon, and he shall speak with thee mouth to mouth, and thou shalt go to Babylon. Yet hear the word of the Lord, O Zedekiah, king of Judah. Thus saith the Lord of thee, thou shalt not die by the sword, but thou shalt die in peace, and with the burnings of thy fathers, the former kings which were before thee, so shall they burn, odors for thee. And they will lament thee, saying, O Lord, for I pronounce the word, saith the Lord. Ezekiel also prophesied to Zedekiah, and he said, my net, and this is Zedekiah speaking, giving a prophecy from God, but talking in this as Nebuchadnezzar. The my is Nebuchadnezzar. So it's Nebuchadnezzar saying, my net also will I spread upon him, and he shall be taken in my snare, Nebuchadnezzar's snare, and I will bring him to Babylon, to the land of the Chaldeans, yet shall he not see it, though he shall die there. Well, there's almost a contradiction there, and I mean, from reading these, what would you think is going to happen? If you don't know the story at all, what prediction would you make? And we've got, I will bring him to the land of Chaldeans, yet he shall not see it, though he shall die there. On the previous one from Jeremiah, you shall not die by the sword, but shall die in peace. So let's look and see what actually happened. In 2 Kings, we have, so they took the king, this here is Zedekiah, and brought him up to the king, Nebuchadnezzar, of Babylon, to Riblah, a city, and they gave judgment upon him. And they slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, and put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and bound him with fetters of brass, and carried him to Babylon. So here, they kill his children right in front of him, and then pop out his eyes. The last thing he sees is his children dying. And he burnt the house of the Lord, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, and every man's house burnt he with him. So everything came true, exactly as it was written. He went to Babylon. He didn't die by the sword. He died in old age in peace. He went there, but he never saw it. But I don't think anybody could have seen that happening just from the prophecies. The prophecies seem so vague, yet when the events took place, and you could look back on it, the clarity was amazing. The next one we're going to discuss is Psalm 22. Now, we're going to do a bigger video on the entire Psalm, but for this particular video, we're just going to go to a smaller part of it. This Psalm was written by David, but it has a strange element to it. It's written about a criminal being executed from the criminal's point of view. It's not known exactly when it was written, but it's approximately 1040 BC. But when you read this psalm, it quickly becomes apparent that it's written from the viewpoint of Jesus. We're going to stick with verses 14 through 17 for today's use. I am poured out like water. Now when they pierced him in the side, water came out with blood. This is one of the symptoms of a crucifixion. And all my bones are out of joint. They're pulled out of joint as part of it. My heart is like wax. I can't remember the exact medical term. I said we'll be doing a bigger study on this. But each one of these points here is a medical symptom of crucifixion. It is melted in the midst of my bowels. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue cleaveth to my jaws. The internal bleeding, the bleeding would dry him out. And thou hast brought me into the dust of death. Each one of these is a symptom that modern medical science has been able to attribute as something that would have taken place in a crucifixion. For dogs have compassed me. The assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. I may tell all my bones. The pain was so excruciating. And excruciating is an interesting point. The word excruciating actually comes from the word crucifixion. The root, C-R-U-C, is the same. It's cross. One is death by cross. The other one is the pain of the death by cross. I may tell all my bones. The pain was so much you could literally feel every bone. They look and stare upon me. All these things are experienced by one that dies from crucifixion. From a medical perspective, this psalm accurately describes the symptoms about crucifixion. There's no chance this is a coincidence. Now we can read the psalm, and by adding our current level of medical knowledge, see an amazing level of detail given to the physical effects to the body that take place during a crucifixion. Many of these things probably were not even known to those performing the crucifixion. Now, a little history about this psalm. Well, like I said, it was written in 1040 BC. Crucifixion was invented about 300 to 400 BC by the Persians. The Romans liked this method of execution so much because it was so brutal and so humiliating that they adopted it and they perfected it. But this dates historically this psalm roughly 700 years before the invention of crucifixion. Now I ask you, when you read this, could you in your wildest imagination, not knowing anything about crucifixion, not knowing anything about the death of Jesus, could you read this psalm and from that devise crucifixion? Could you predict crucifixion? I just don't think it'd be possible. I don't think you'd see crucifixion in this. Looking back on it, we find an amazing level of precision in the medical knowledge that took place by the ultimate author. And the ultimate author obviously is God here. There are numerous other such examples showing the same pattern. Incredibly vague before the event takes place, incredibly precise after the event takes place. Of course, this naturally leads to the next question of prophecies yet fulfilled. And I see no reason to think that anything is different. I don't believe anyone is going to be able to read the prophecies yet be fulfilled and to be able to specifically declare what will happen, though many claim to do this. This is Daniel 9:27. Now, Daniel chapter 9, the last part of it is about the end times, things yet to happen. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week. Now, a week here is a 7-year span. In Hebrew, a week was a span of sevens. It could be a week of days, a week of months, a week of years. So don't get confused thinking this is 7 days. In this case, it's 7 years. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. Now this is speaking of the abomination and desolation spoken of later on by Jesus, who refers specifically back to this verse. People look at this verse and they'll say, we are going to have a treaty with Israel. Someone's going to have a treaty with Israel, allowing them to rebuild the temple, and then the Antichrist will come in and put up a statue of him or sacrifice a pig on the altar. That may be what happens, but that's not what we know. What we know is that a covenant will be formed. Now, that doesn't mean a treaty. The word covenant here in Hebrew is berith, and it can mean a covenant or an alliance, an agreement, a pledge, an ordinance, or a treaty. Any one of those things is what's spoken of here. It doesn't say a treaty or a peace treaty. Now, we do know the temple will be rebuilt because you couldn't have the abomination of desolation without the temple. So it does have to be rebuilt, probably because of this covenant, but I don't even know that we have confirmed proof of that. We may have. But as far as the abomination of desolation, which is hinted at here and talked more about in the New Testament, we have no idea what that is, just that it is an abomination in the temple. It could be something the Antichrist does with a statue of him, could be the sacrifice of any unclean animal. It could be something that no one's really thought of yet, or that I haven't heard anybody mention yet. We just don't know. It's too vague. When it happens, it's probably going to be crystal clear. We're going to see different hints in here that we're going to go, well, not us, because hopefully we'll all be in heaven at that point, but those looking at this are going to be seeing amazing clarity to it, but it's not there yet. Now, does this mean that prophecy is not important? Absolutely not. If it weren't important, it wouldn't be in the Bible. We should know prophecy, especially in the times we are living in, because I believe we are closer. We're definitely closer than we were. We're closer today than we were yesterday. But I believe we're approaching the time when these things are going to happen in our lifetime. People have been saying that for a long time. I'm more right than the people were 100 years ago. Who knows? No one knows. The Bible is very clear on that. But we are getting closer. And my opinion is the reason we should know prophecy is so that we can recognize the events as they take place and acknowledge that God had warned us of them 2,000 years ago, not that we should try to predict the future, which is something he warns against. That's how I view prophecy. Love to have a conversation with anybody about it in the comments below or through email. Thank you and God bless.